All right, Neal Damiano is back. We had a great first session where we talked about reality TV, but Neal is also a movie critic. What's happening, Neal? How you feeling, man?
Uh, yeah, that message came up. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, and, yeah, I've been writing for a website out of England called Top 10 Films. They're based out of England, but they have like over thousands and thousands of subscribers from all over. So I mean, they've
Okay.
been around for a long time,
All
and
right.
basically, I do top 10 film lists for them and articles on iconic films from like 30th anniversaries, 40th anniversaries, that type of stuff.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna make sure that I did notice that in your IG. So in the description area, I will put your Instagram, and I will also put the website so people could go and
Sure,
take a look.
please. It's a fun
So
website.
yeah, I was actually taking a look at it this morning. So what we're going to discuss today is why these modern movies are watered down, why there is a woke agenda, why there is no originality. I mean, I'm sure if you dig deep and you go into an independent circuit, I'm sure you could find some of that stuff. But for the most part, mainstream movies are basically crappy remakes with all women or
Well,
superhero movies, DC or Marvel.
well, not well, yeah. Now you have to dig really deep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
with a big shovel. Yeah,
And it's
bad.
let me let me just explain. So it's unfortunate for people our age and older. I would say 35 and older, because that our generation has seen some of the greatest movies ever produced. I mean, if you go to the 90s into the early 2000s, you have like literally some of the greatest directors, the greatest writers. Casting was fantastic, and the movies were next to none. In my personal opinion, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, the 70s and the 90s had the greatest era of movies. You know, but go ahead.
Well, I have to correct you on one thing.
Go ahead.
People our age, I know people our age that do love the Marvel and DC films, and that's fine.
Right.
But what you're speaking upon is people who like film, like
Right.
me and you, people who like real cinema.
Right.
It's a shame. They're feeling the effects of non-creative, non-unoriginal movies now. And like my man Chris Gore from Film Threat said, it's not the filmmakers, it's the industry. And what
Right.
he means by that is there are filmmakers out there making films. Unfortunately, it's a business, which people don't realize. It's an industry and a business. So what I mean by that is it's got to make money, just like every other business. So the filmmakers no longer want to take risks, and they're going to put out Marvel films because they know they're going to make tenfold money back. It's
Mm.
going to sell out in the first night versus an original, say, horror film, for example. Horror's gotten popular over the years, but the Marvel film is going to sell out over the romantic film. Even if you have a major star in romantic film,
Mm.
Marvel and DC films, that universe is going to sell out way faster than an originally written script. So
Mm.
see, you got to look back, John. Back in
And
okay,
when you say sell out, you mean sell out globally.
oh yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
I mean, and that's the problem is that the artistic. I mean, we have the Jordan Peels. There's an exception. We have him, thank God, who's
Mm.
doing original stuff. I mean, he's heavily influenced by Hitchcock. You can see in his films, but we
Okay.
won't go. But everybody's influenced by Hitchcock, so we won't even go there. But
Right.
he does original stuff. He does mind blowing, interesting um, stuff that you really have to think about. And I'm not knocking the Marvel films. I'm not going to be another like Scorsese here. Even though I'm on his side from what he said,
Mm.
and he got a lot of backlash for that. I'm sure you
Well,
remember.
explain what he said.
Well, Martin Scorsese basically said that Marvel films are not real films,
Well,
and he
they
got
aren't.
on blast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but he got like, you know,
Yeah.
crucified in
Yeah.
the industry.
Yeah, and
Um,
they
but
aren't.
I mean, he's right.
They're basically a blown up cartoon, really. I mean,
And I mean, and Quentin Tarantino, who I'm a fanatical about, has also gone on to say he's been asked, and he said that uh, he wouldn't make a Marvel film for all the money in the world because it's a slap against his filmmaking,
mhm.
and there are filmmakers that are fighting that battle. You know what I mean? So they are speaking out about it. It is evident. You have industry, well-respected industry critics far beyond me, like Chris Gore from Film Threat, who has gone on to say in interviews that it's the industry, it's a business, so people are scared to take risks now. If you look back to the '60s, it was about the leading man, a romantic story, a man finds love, happily ever after. There's no edge, there's a safety net, and that's what America wanted at that time. And then in the '70s, you got the backlash of the studios. The studios were the ones that were calling the shots, making the films. You couldn't make a film without going through the studios.
Mhm.
You had studio directors like Ford and those guys, even Hawks, who was a little edgy, but he was still a studio guy. You didn't have that new Hollywood movement yet. And as soon as like '73 came around, I mean, on all honesty, I would say '68 when Bonnie and Clyde first came out.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, it started in the late
and Night
'60s. Yeah.
of the Living Dead, Romero, they started the whole independent new Hollywood movement film, even though Night of the Living Dead wasn't classified as New Hollywood because it was a horror film, but it
Mhm.
really technically, I mean, with the budget and the creativity of it. But I mean, you had these guys that had some balls that were willing to speak out, like Jack Nicholson, Dennis Hopper,
Mhm.
uh, Peter Fonda. These guys were the backlot rebels. There's an interesting book that I want to recommend to your audience and you called, I think it's called The Backlot Rebels or something like that,
Mhm.
and it talks all about that. I've read several books on it,
What's it called
but
again?
it's something like Rebels of the Backlot or something like that. I'm
Backlot.
sorry, I don't know the name
I'll look it up.
off, but it talks about all that stuff. There's a lot of books on it,
Mhm.
uh, but it's a major contrast. It's a major difference. I mean, these guys were saying, fuck the Hollywood system. We're going to create a new Hollywood. And that's where the term New Hollywood movement came from. And that's my favorite era in cinema. And that's '70s, all the way
Right.
through the
Right. The
'70s.
casting was also different, right? Because,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but prior to that whole movement, the casting was your typical, very good-looking man or woman.
Leading man, Cary
Yeah.
Grant,
Right.
Jimmy Stewart, the Montgomery Cliff,
Right.
those guys from the old era. Very good looking men. Rock Hudson, very stature, family, well to do, put together, straight
Right.
laced
Right.
men.
Right.
You had people like Jack Nicholson and who's a big, I want to say, starter of that, or
Mhm.
lack of a better word, of that movement, in Dennis Hopper. Really, I mean, you have
Mhm.
them to thank for that backlash, uh, and they made Easy Rider,
Yeah.
which was basically a non Hollywood studio film, basically pretty much. I believe the first real um, out of pocket film.
Mhm.
I could be wrong about that, but I mean, I think that they funded it themselves, Dennis Hopper and Jack Nicholson.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a great film.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Did that
ironically, the
change the
film is about rebel being a rebel, anyways. So I mean,
Yeah. Did that change casting? Because, like we were saying before, casting went from being very good looking to being more real looking.
well, I mean, you had Nicholson, who was not, he was not a typical movie star looks. I mean, he was
No.
rugged. He was rough
Yeah.
around the edges.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the guy you'd see like working in the construction site. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, and brilliant actor, but I mean, he didn't have that, and I'm not saying he was like, this grotesque looking guy, but I mean, he was rugged. He let the
Yeah.
beard grow. He let the hair grow.
There was a lot of guys like that. I mean, you could Gene Hackman and Al Pacino and De Niro, and you go down the line. They were regular looking dudes. They weren't these even the girls to extent. They always want the pretty girls, but but even the girls, when you had um, um, Meryl Streep, you know, she was pretty, but she wasn't that mind blowing beauty that they normally go for.
Yeah, she was more motherly, the school teacher type of
Right.
look than the big starlet. Yeah, I mean that casting changed because they started doing everything. You know, that's what the whole indie film movement was about. Is they were casting, they were getting their people to do. There was no studio people involved, which was a big thing. And then you come back full circle, 25 or 30 or so years later to the 90s or whatever. And you get that movement. The directors of the early 90s were influenced by the 70s directors, and that's why you had those independent movement in the early 90s with people like Tarantino burst onto the scene. I mean, he was a child of. I read several books on Tarantino. I mean, he was a cinema kid. He went to the New Beverly Cinema, lived there. His stepfather would take him there, who was very fond of, and he would take him to movies like The Getaway, The Mechanic, these hard films, The Great Escape, Ironclad. When he's a kid, and it got influenced by that.
And you can actually see in his early films, he does have a 70s feel to it. You know, the credits are more like the 70s. He uses a lot of music from the 70s. So
because he's a postmodern filmmaker, so what he does is he takes stuff from the past and makes it postmodern. Probably one of the greatest postmodern filmmakers ever. But he uses a lot of pop culture references, and that's what postmodern filmmakers do. And there's not a whole lot of them out there. But I mean, I really think that Hitchcock. I went to film study school. My course was Hitchcock. Director series in schools with director series courses, and that's what I took, the Alfred Hitchcock one. And people don't credit him for his first American film was Rebecca, but I mean, he's done close to 100 films.
Wow.
And his films they were funded by the New England Film Commission and stuff. I mean, the England Film Commission when he was in England. But he had a say in most of his films. I mean, he was one of the ones who really stood up and created his vision. So, I mean, it really starts a lot with Hitchcock, and that's why he influences so many directors. But, you had people like Kubrick, Adrian Lyne, Sayles. These people were, even John Carpenter Halloween was not a studio film. You know what I mean? Like Carpenter, that was an independent film. Night of the Living Dead, George Romero, one of the pioneers of independent film cinema. He doesn't get enough credit. Unfortunately we lost him, but he doesn't get enough credit for what he did for the independent film community at a time when it was not really popular, not independent film. That film Night of the Living Dead it's a masterpiece because it's a film that has social commentary, but it's in almost the guise of horror, and it is horror. But what he was talking about in that film was on so many social levels that was not seen in filmmaking at that time, 1968. So it was around. And to have a black male hero was unheard of.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. It was completely ahead of its time. During that time, too, a lot of the movies, especially during the 70s, they reflected life a lot. Like the movies reflected what was going on in the country at the time. And I mean, the music was doing it as well. And we kind of see the reverse now, where music and movies don't reflect anything about life today. But during that time, you had movies like, Dog Day Afternoon, or you had movies like, some Apocalypse Now, and it was reflecting
Yeah,
the hardships of the country at the time, which you don't get anymore.
because they were character centered, and they were, they were the '70s films were very character centered driven, and then the '80s was a reflection of the '60s, which was feel safe. Let's get a whale in a cute little whale in here. Let's get a Bigfoot guy that's friendly that a family adopts. Harry and the Hendersons. Those kind of
Right.
films were, they were family based films. They were fun
Yeah.
to watch. But I mean, even Spielberg, who I respect, I mean, he's a great filmmaker, but he was making family
Yeah.
oriented films.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I agree. And then in the 80s
that
had
was
they
the
had
'80s.
yeah, and then they had the action and the family friendly, and there was sprinkles of good movies. Like last night I watched Born on the Fourth of July,
Yeah, great film.
which personally I thought was Tom
But
Cruise's
that's
best movie
based
ever.
that's based on a guy. It's a time period piece, and it's based on a actual real life guy.
Yeah,
Which
right, right.
which a lot of the '80s films, there was quite a few of them that were. Yeah, I mean, there were some decent films in the '80s for sure, but the most of the decade
Yes,
was what I call fail safe. It was
right.
just very safe.
Agreed.
The '70s films were not safe. I mean, you
No.
had films dealing with drug addiction, rape, homosexuality, um, New York City at a time where it was just very seedy. You had films like Taxi Driver.
Death
Um,
Wish.
you had the Death Wish series, Taxi Driver. Um, like Dog Day Afternoon,
I'm trying to.
Chinatown.
Yeah.
Um, there's so many. Even excuse me, Midnight Cowboy is really considered I mean, it came out in '68, but it was the first R-rated film to
Hmm.
win an. Brilliant performances by Dustin Hoffman and John Voight. I mean, that film is just a masterpiece.
Dustin
Uh,
Hoffman made a movie, and I can't remember the name of it, and it reflects human nature and life and the people that made this movie, and you'd have to help me with it. The people that made this movie were so in tune with human nature. It's he plays this very like kind of like weakling kind of guy, and he's married to a woman that's a lot more attractive than him, right? Kind of not on the same level, and they I don't know, they have a home and they're fixing the home, and they have these construction workers on the home, and the construction
uh,
workers.
I think you're talking about Straw Dogs. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, yes. And the construction workers are very, manly, masculine, guys that like I can relate to. And the wife does a little bit of flirting, and then one of the construction guys decides he's going to have his way with her. But during that scene, when he has his way with her, he basically grapes her, right? Um, there's a portion where she enjoys it, and she says, just hold me, you know, so on and so forth. And it's this human nature where a lot of people don't admit, but a woman will marry a man for when it comes to commitment, will marry a man that is uh, vulnerable and will not leave her. So they marry the safe choice, but then they desire the monster. They desire the
Yeah,
masculinity.
well, I mean, those films, a lot of those films were a reflection of human condition
Right.
and human psyche, and it brought out fears that we don't like to talk about,
Right.
that basically Straw Dogs was basically a film about masculinity.
Right.
Here's this guy, he's a white collar guy, he's got a very attractive woman who probably dated the alpha male her whole
Mm-hmm.
life. She got a little older, she wanted the structured, um what's the word, stable
Right.
guy. um
Grounded.
yeah, made good money, wants to start a new house and everything. But yeah, the woman just, those desires never leave them.
Right.
The alpha male, that's always going to be there. And these films reflected what humans realistically deal with.
Right.
Rather, the '80s was a fantasy decade.
Right. Right. Right.
On
Right. Right.
Ghostbusters, Gremlins. That's all.
Right.
That's all fantasy. That's all surrealism, fantasy stuff. It's great. were great movies to bring your kids to, great to
Right.
escape reality, but it was a contrast to the 70s cinema, which was in your face. We're going to shove in your face the dark side of human nature, like Taxi Driver, a guy who's post Vietnam veteran. Um, he's I did one of my film thesis papers on Taxi Driver. There's a it's basically a guy about PST, post traumatic stress disorder.
Mhm.
Give me nights, all nights, I can't sleep. Lone in New York City at a time when shit was going on in New York City. There
Mhm.
was on the street, hookers everywhere. There was bathhouses. There was porn theaters.
Mhm.
You're talking 70s New York City, not like now. Starbucks and Apple
Right.
stores.
Right. 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 Right.
I mean,
Yeah, you're
like,
right. You're right.
um, and here's a guy who's seeing this degeneration of America,
Mhm.
and that's why it's a really dark, disturbing film. If you really look at it, John, it's a very
Mhm.
disturbing film
Yeah.
if you break it down.
Yeah. Jodie Foster
It,
plays a
it,
prostitute who was
you know,
12, right?
yeah, and he has a savior complex. He's
Mhm.
an alienated guy who doesn't do well with women. He's socially awkward,
Yes.
and he tends to he figures in his mind he could probably get an edge over on a younger girl because her mind's not developed yet. So he
Okay.
becomes obsessed with Jodie Foster, who's a prostitute on the streets, who's I think 13 in the film,
Yeah.
supposed to be. He strikes out with Sybil Shepherd's character, and she's a
Yeah.
political worker.
Right.
Strikes out with her. She's a grown woman. Fucks it up with her. So he's
Yeah.
like, okay,
He takes it to an triple X rated film.
yeah.
What
Which
was the
shows
what
you
was the
his,
good, sorry.
which
What was the
shows you
thought
how
process?
well, he doesn't distinguish the differences between men and women. He just figures, I go to these movies, so she must like them too.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Pretty simple, basic.
Yeah.
I mean, that was his mentality. He had the mind of he didn't have a fully um, normal thinking process of a
Hmm.
mind. And I mean, like even when he goes up to, there's a scene in the movie that I still get chills today when I watch it, where he goes up to, they're all parked at a diner, and Peter Boyle plays Wizard,
That's right.
and he goes up to, and he always kind of confides in Wizard, because Wizard's kind of the old wisdom guy. He's been around for a while. Nothing really bothers Wizard, though. He's one of those guys that's kind of laid back and goes with the flow. He knows how life is. You work and you die, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And pretty simple guy. And De Niro comes up, Travis Bickle comes up to him and says, I got these. He said, Wizard, can I talk to you for a second? He says, I got these I got these thoughts. I got these really bad thoughts. I think I'm going to do something bad.
Hmm.
And Wizard says, well, we all get like that. I mean, just getting you down. I don't know. I can't remember verbatim, but something to the
Right.
effect, you just, a man becomes his job. You take a job. Like me, I could own a taxi service if I wanted, but I don't want to do that. I just want to work. You know what I mean, and go home. A man, he works and he goes home. He's just take it easy. Don't get so, he kind of brushes it off, and that's a
Mm.
pinnacle scene that nobody, like, this guy's a walking time bomb, and
Right.
nobody's noticing it, and he's
Yes.
given the clues. And it's one of the first films where it also glorified the anti-hero, because at the end De Niro becomes the hero. There's newspaper clippings of him
Yes.
killing drug addicts,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean. So it's like Scorsese is brilliant in that aspect, where he wants to put it, what side are you on? Are you on the side where he goes on a rampage and shoots these guys and kills all these guys because he's infatuated with a 13-year-old prostitute,
Mhm.
or he cleaned up the streets? He killed hookers, junkies, and pimps, and he
Yeah.
cleaned up the street. And he's kind of an anti-hero. It's whatever way you want to look at it.
Hmm.
Um, and Scorsese has done with that in several films. He did in another film called King of Comedy, which is
Yes.
brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
De-
um, which is the same thing, same type of thing, anti-hero.
yeah.
Looper, the character
De
Looper.
Niro and Jerry Lewis, right?
Yep, and what's her name? The comedian too, Sandra Bernhard. He was great in
Oh
that.
God, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Um, so I mean, he was making those films to give that message, and you really come out with a real sense of uh, human condition watching
Mhm.
those films. Whereas in the '80s, you just didn't. And I
Right.
mean, the '90s kind of went towards that kind of movement again. Um, Really well written, very pushing the envelope, dark, character centered films through that whole stretch of the '90s. And I mean, not even beyond Tarantino. I mean, Tarantino was a big fixture, but I mean,
Yeah, like Spike Lee.
I would even throw Kevin Smith in there, to be honest with you. I mean,
Yeah.
he was basically, I mean, he was a dick joke guy, but
There was a lot of them during the 90s. There was
the
who were the
dialogue was still there.
oh yeah, I mean
You know,
Spike Lee, Tarantino. Then you had the brothers.
yeah.
What were the brothers? God. And then
Um,
I can't remember the
well,
names.
You had Fairley brothers. You had Neil LaBute. You had Todd Solondz. You don't hear too much about these guys anymore, and it's a shame because they made some brilliant films. You had
Brian.
Sex Lies Videotape, which
Right,
was
right, right, right.
what's his name? I'm drawing a blank here, but
Didn't Brian De Palma direct Natural Born Killers?
yeah, no,
No, it wasn't Brian De Palma.
I'll, no, Quentin Tarantino produced an Oliver Stone
Oliver
directed it,
Stone. I apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah, Oliver. Oh, okay. Oliver Stone's another one. Right. Okay.
but
Right.
Tarantino didn't like that film.
He hated it.
I
Yeah.
don't know why. Yeah, yeah, it was kind of his The Shining. How Kubrick
Yeah.
hated Stephen King. It was kind of that whole deal.
Yeah.
Um, but I think Tarantino kind of just, I think he, and it's not bashing Tarantino at all, but I think he's somebody that just wants to do everything. So he produced it, but he didn't have really, the control.
Yeah. He sold the
So
script, right? Yeah. Once you sell the script,
yeah,
it's out
well,
of your
yeah,
hands. Yeah.
yeah. Same thing with
So
True Romance.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So so in the 90s, you have this resurgence of originality, great casting, great dialogue. I mean, the movies I mean, they were just tremendous. And you had Scorsese that was still really pushing what Goodfellas and
Yeah,
he started the gangster genre with Goodfellas, and you had a lot of cheap versions after that, like A Bronx Tale and Donnie Brasco and so on and so forth. And then you just had these, tremendous artists. Yeah, these tremendous characters. I mean, till this day, I could, verbatim recite lines to these movies, and a friend could give me the same line, the next line right after that, right? And then in the 2000s, it's kind of continues, but it starts changing.
well, that's the thing about the '90s is that they were dialogue driven films, and that's why Tarantino did so well in the
Mhm.
'90s. Is it was all dialogue driven, even with Scorsese. I
Yeah.
mean, Tarantino was heavily influenced by Martin Scorsese with the dialogue. They
Mhm.
call Tarantino the dialogue king, but they forget about Scorsese. I
Right.
mean, Scorsese doesn't. I don't know if you know that, but he doesn't write a lot of his films. He's a director. He's not a
Okay.
screenwriter.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people realize that he doesn't screenwrite. A lot of his stuff is through Paul Schrader, who's a brilliant screenwriter. And this
Okay.
might be great, useful information for your audience. I'm assuming you're going to show this to your film audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you have categories. I noticed. I've been following your stuff. You have like one for bodybuilding, one for
Yeah. Yeah.
I
No,
don't know what I know.
this is going to be on the Outcast channel. So this is going to be the interview channel. Yeah.
We
So
call it
yeah.
Outcast.
Yeah, exactly. So in the 2000s, it starts changing, but you still have it starts really changing in like the late 2000s, I would say, and it went to the teens. After 2010, it really starts really going in another direction,
Yeah.
because even the superhero movies were deeper and better written, and casting was great. So even when you
Yeah.
had the Dark Knight and the Batman series, it was more of an adult type of movie. It was the villains were fantastic. Um, Obviously you had
There
Heath
was
Ledger
less
as the
CGI.
yeah.
There was more
Um,
dialogue.
But what
Stuff like
drove it? What drove it into this direction where we're going to get rid of the originality? We're going to get rid of, um, we're going to get rid of the casting. We're going to get rid of all that, and then it pushes it into this kind of like cartoonish, woke, just and nothing else is produced besides that. What pushes that? What pushes that in that direction?
one word, money,
Okay.
money,
All right. All right.
money. Basically, the um the conglomerate like companies, I don't know what they are, Marvel Films or whatever, Stan Lee, I don't know if he had a hand in that, or Disney maybe owns them now. I
Yeah.
can't.
Right. Yeah.
It's just money, they're getting massive amounts of money, and these kids want to see sensationalism at an all-time high. They don't want to follow a story. They don't want to follow some guy who's down and out, who finds redemption, falls in love, maybe kills some bad people. They don't want to see that anymore. The millennial,
Mm.
I mean, I'm not here to come on your show to bash Gen Y and Gen Z. I'm Gen X. I mean, me and you
Me
were
too.
Gen,
Yeah.
you know what I
It's
mean? So
okay.
we're all,
I bash Gen Z all the time. Don't worry about it.
um, they don't want they don't want an intent. They don't have an attention span like that. They grew up with social media. They grew up
Yeah.
with iPhones and in their hand out of the womb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Let
and
me.
they want sensationalism. They want the
Let,
big buses turning over and
yeah.
big Thor in the sky and whatever. And
Let me
that's
play
what
devil's
money.
advocate for a second. Is it that they don't want it, or is it that that's what they're being fed? Because let's look at a movie like Wolf of Wall Street, which was a tremendous movie done by Martin Scorsese, but had action, if you will, for lack of a better term, from the beginning to the end. It kept your attention from the beginning to the end, but also was a very, very deep movie. So, in my opinion, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, if you make a movie like that, maybe a younger audience would enjoy it and get into it, because that movie was a tremendous hit and has like a cultural like a following till this day that's like the old school movies, right?
Well, you know why? The dialogue. It's
Mm.
kind of cartoony, like you said. I mean, it's what we call out it uh kind of surrealistic character films or
Mm.
alter ego films, whereas Leonardo DiCaprio is so over the top
Mm-hmm.
that's going to draw a younger audience. You throw a good looking leading actor in there, and you throw Jonah Hill,
Yeah,
Matthew
right.
McConaughey. These kids don't know who all those people are, especially Jonas. What's his name? Hill. There, is that his
Yeah,
name?
Jonah
Joseph.
Hill. Yes.
um, if you read, I mean, and again, I'm not. Yeah, I love Scorsese, but Scorsese did this purposely. It doesn't really. I mean, the guy was like that. I think his name is Jordan Belfort.
That's right. Yeah.
Um, but it was notched 10 levels up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, the part where they're on the phone and like they're convincing that guy, and he's like, well, I just got married. My wife's gonna divorce me. He's like, come on, penny stock, just buy one more stock. And the guy's like, and he's like, how many shares you want? And he's going like this on the
Yeah, yeah,
phone, and they're
yeah,
all
yeah,
laughing in the back, and he's going
yeah,
reeling them in. You
yeah.
know, that's to lure a younger audience in.
Right, right, right,
You
right.
know what I mean?
So,
Like,
so my opinion is, if you make a movie
but it
where
doesn't always work.
I see, I see, I
So it's
see.
risk still.
Okay.
But Scorsese's that good. But
Yeah.
with a Marvel film, there's no risk. There's absolutely no risk. They're gonna come out. They're gonna come
Okay.
out. It's gonna fill the seats, and they're gonna make loads of money. And
Mm.
that's what it's all about now. It's not about creative, character centered films anymore, unfortunately. And I don't think we're gonna go back to that. Unfortunately, I was talking about this the other day to somebody. Um, it's just too much of a money machine. Um, and we're, far into the millennial world now. It's a social media tech world. We're not
Hmm.
going back. So sensationalism is at an all time high. People want their 15 minutes of fame, and know if everybody's got a platform, a podium now. And it's just going to keep advancing, and that's affecting. The film world is just going to keep give me what's hot, new, fast, hitting sensationalism, and then out the door, the next one, the next one, the next one. And we could keep doing it and doing it. And Hulk never dies. The Avengers always win. They come back, they fight some other evil person, they do some other stuff. And it's just gonna keep going and going, adding more characters in, this and that. And the guy that's writing an eccentric script in a room, um about some people that want to rob a bank, and
Yeah,
whatever they
the Rocky story, what
yeah,
Stallone was
or the
broken,
Rocky
right in the
story, or
script.
a broken
Yeah.
guy that this they don't that's it's irrelevant now. It's not what is the appealing thing anymore.
And that's and you don't see it changing anytime soon.
Unfortunately not. I mean, I would like to, I have some hope, but
Yeah.
that guy's never going to see the light of day. It's going to go on a
No.
streaming service or something, or
Yeah. No.
I
If it
mean,
does.
take horror. I'm a horror guy. Here's a perfect example. People bash those slasher films from the early '80s, but I'll tell you what, they were written. They were written. They had a plot. They had a story, and an ending. Um, they were tongue in cheek. They were absolutely ridiculous. I mean, they were like video nasties, but they were independent. They were written by a guy. They were
Right.
done
Right. Right.
not by studio. It was a movement, and they were entertaining. Something as silly as that. I mean, they were influenced by so many other things, but and you did get some masterpieces out of there, like Halloween and Black Christmas and Night of the Living Dead, and these are all horror films.
Right.
Nightmare on Elm Street, it's a masterpiece, the first one.
Right.
Such a
Right.
groundbreaking film. Original Friday the 13th, even, which
Right.
ushered the slasher movement into America tenfold. These films don't get enough credit, but um and where was I going with this? They were far more intelligent, believe it or not, than the films out today. Even the silly slasher films, I have to say.
Absolutely. I
I
couldn't
mean,
agree more.
I'm like, it's just
Yeah.
crazy. And that was in the late '70s to the early '80s.
Yeah.
As soon as that was still a counterculture, was still a movement, and now there's no move. I mean, it's just a death of culture, and
Yeah.
musically and film wise, the millennium just completely, uh, you know, there's
Destroyed.
no set apart thing that is like antagonizing the culture and shaking it up.
Yeah. I could just talk to you about this forever, but I'm only gonna bring up two more topics and then I'm gonna let you go. Um, I've always liked edgy comedy. Always, always, always. And it's at
Mhm.
the and in my opinion, the best comedies came out during the 2000s, in the 2000s, with 40-Year-Old Virgin and get him to the Greek, and what's the other one that Seth Rogen did, where he gets the girl pregnant and he's a loser,
Oh, no,
knocked up. I mean,
yeah.
these are, especially Get Him to the Greek, these are hilarious films. I
Even
mean,
Meet the Fockers, and
meet
those
the
are fun films.
absolutely meet the it was, and now it's at
Something
the
about Mary.
right. Yes, these were hilarious. I mean, and that was the late '90s into the 2000s. But now you can't even get a comedy produced. I mean, there are no comedy, and if they are not funny. It is just crap, and it's the same jokes over and over and over. It's garbage. Why did they even kill that genre?
Uh, it, I don't. I mean, I could be wrong here, John, but I really don't think kids are interested in film, periodly. I mean,
A
the
f-
movie, I
really,
mean,
a
a
funny comedy?
Scream,
Really? Usually that draws a
yeah, I
young
mean,
young crowd.
Scream will draw the kids in, but I mean, and I might sound like I don't know, angry, jaded old guy, but I don't think they're really interested in any of that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Like
because I think it's going to tie into the next. I think
it's just action in Marvel films,
that's
basically.
it. That's it. I think it's going to tie into the next topic, which is this woke agenda that's being pushed in movies and streaming services, and it's at the point where I can't even. And I'm not the only one. I've spoken to several people. I can't even watch it anymore because I need a little bit of reality in my fantasy.
Right.
Right. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I can't watch a movie where I just go, that would never happen, even if it's the most over the top
Yeah, that
movie.
can't
Right. The
cancel
perfect,
culture stuff. And
yeah, the perfect example is when you watch the original Star Wars, right, which obviously came out in the late 70s. And Luke Skywalker is a boy, and it's basically a story about a boy becoming a man by the time he gets to the third one. And the villain is this evil person that is so mysterious and you can't take him over, and he's so powerful. And the villain is just this larger than life, obviously Darth Vader. And Luke Skywalker has to train and learn and become a Jedi. And it's basically turning into a man story, right? A boy to a man story,
right.
and conquering basically his inner evils, if you will, his fears and whatnot. And then they decided to make the new one. And like, okay, so for example, in the first Star Wars, Luke Skywalker's teacher is killed by the villain. So Obi-Wan Kenobi is killed by the villain. In the second Star Wars, he searches out for another teacher, which is Yoda. And then he battles the villain, but he loses. Right?
I gotta tell you, I don't mean to interrupt. I have not followed. I've only seen the Lucas ones. That's the
Okay.
Star Wars to me.
Yeah, me
So
too. Well, I'll
just
ex- I'll,
you
I'll
know,
explain. I'll get there. And then in the third one, when he's a full-grown Jedi, which is a full man, then he's able to finally conquer the villain, right? Which is basically your responsibility as a man. You get to a point where, like right now, like there's almost nothing that I can't confront because at 47 years old, you were at that ride. Go to the new one, right? And I forgot the girl's name who plays is the new star of the role. Okay, fine. You want to put a woman in there? It's fine. The first movie, she defeats the villain, who is the grandson of Darth Vader. In the first movie, she destroys the villain. She beats him in a Jedi battle, but she's not a Jedi. She has no training. And the mysterious of the villain's not there. He immediately, I think within the second scene, takes the mask off. You know who he is right away. And then after she beats the villain, she searches out Luke Skywalker to train her. And it just, even though it's a Star Wars movie, it makes no sense.
they don't. Well, the thing is like I said, they don't want to follow. They don't want to follow a story and think and come to some kind of conclusion. They want instant, like you know, the screams. You know who it is, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It There's no like, you have to follow this and you have to figure it out and you
Right.
have to
Right.
see
Right.
where it's going.
Right.
And the intrigue of like, it could be this person, it could be this person, or why is this person doing this? All that stuff is just taken out because they don't want to follow that stuff. They just want to see battles, somebody dying, fighting each other, battling. And that's basically what they want to see. They don't want to be taken into a story. Like, when
Yeah.
we were kids, we had like Never Ending Story and stuff,
Oh,
and
yeah. Sure. Sure.
like
Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
Hobbit and Time Bandits. Those were stories you had to follow. Cloak and
Yeah.
Dagger, you had to follow those.
Right.
Conan the
Right. Right. Right.
Barbarian.
Yeah.
They followed a story.
Yeah.
You know,
You and I usually see eye to eye, but I'm going to disagree with you on one thing. I don't think it's that the kids don't want to follow the story. I think the kids are just taking in what they are given. I think that if studios were to make a movie that had a lot of detail and action at the same time and had meaning, I think kids would actually enjoy it. But I think
yeah, I agree with you.
I think they're just eating
Sure,
what they are given on a plate, and that's it. They
sure,
don't
right.
know any better, right?
And that comes
Um,
down to money.
Right. I completely,
That's
yeah,
where the money
absolutely.
comes in.
Right, right,
I
right,
absolutely
right.
agree with you. I mean, I'm not calling all kids in America stupid or that they can't. I mean, I'm sure they would love to if they were exposed to that. But the problem with the industry now, John, is that they're not going to be. They're
Yeah,
never,
yeah,
you know what I mean? And,
yeah,
they're just, it's like ignorance is bliss.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's what they grow up with. So it's
Right.
what they're accustomed to. So
So
it's what they expect. And unfortunately,
yeah. So moving into the woke agenda, you have these movies where basically it is feminizing the man and masculinizing the woman. I don't know why. I don't know why every man is a bumbling idiot. I don't know why every
yeah,
man is a fool or is feminine. I don't get it. And it's down to the streaming services, and it doesn't reflect real
that's going on
life.
in America. That's going on
Yeah.
in
And
America
it
beyond
seems to be a
film. And
collaboration with
film
companies that
reflects society, and that's what's going on in society. Let's be honest.
that's
You know,
true.
we
That's
could
true.
get bashed for this, John, but we're
That's
gonna
all
speak
right.
our mind on your podcast. You like to keep it 100% real.
Absolutely.
Um, that's what's going on in America. We all see it. It's
Yeah.
obvious. I mean, me. I'm a punk rock. I'm a tattooed dude. I come from the old traditional values. A man, man,
Right.
man, man.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I
Right.
mean? I
Right.
wear regular jeans. I don't wear the skinny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
we
Right.
come
Right.
from
Right.
that era. I wear hats, Kim. I'm not. Um, but that's what the media is pushing. The media is pushing. You have to include all aspects of, and hopefully your audience doesn't get me wrong here, but I'm just being honest. We have to be 100% honest here. That
Absolutely.
the films and the TV shows, they have to include everything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean by they have to include
Absolutely. Yeah.
the quirky gay neighbor, and
Right. Right. Right.
like
Right.
where you didn't see that. And I mean,
Yeah.
like there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but it's just it's a pushed in your face agenda
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
traditional, the Charles Bronsons and the Mickey Rourke's and those
Exactly.
are gone.
Yeah.
Even the Clint Eastwoods, those
Right.
images are gone. Those are thing
Even
of the
Stallone actually just recently spoke out about it. I don't know if you heard, where he's trying to produce his next movie, and he actually said, "I'm not putting any woke agenda in my movie," which leads me to believe that his producers are actually trying to force him to do that.
probably, probably
And
because
and
it makes money. The latter is a risk. Well, these kids, like you said, film reflects society. So what's going on in society today, the film is going to want to reflect that because that's what people know and that's what makes the money. Sylvester Stallone, probably he's an indie guy, so he probably doesn't give a shit.
mhm,
He's gonna
mhm.
what he wants to make. You know what I mean? Like he's always done.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
these guys who have track records are having problems making movies that they want to make. And even Scorsese, when he did The Irishman, had a very difficult time producing it. I believe Netflix was the only one that would produce it.
yeah,
And you're talking about Scorsese, and I would love to see how Tarantino, I know he's working on his last film. I would love to see how he's going to pull this off, or is he going to adapt? I don't know.
one thing about Tarantino, he does not give a fuck. I mean, I know enough about the guy.
Yeah,
I've read books on him. I mean, I've never met, but he does what he wants, and it
yeah.
works out for him. He just does what he wants.
I hope
I
he's
gotta
able
say to
to.
you, I gotta say
Mhm.
to you, watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood again. Give it
Yeah.
another try, John.
Okay.
You might like it because a lot of people didn't like it because I got what he was doing. It's a dialogue-driven film, which is
Right.
mostly Tarantino does. That's his
Right.
shtick. That's his thing. But it's a time period piece film about the 60s. So if you go into it like that, you might say, okay, Tarantino did something here with this. It's pretty cool. I mean, he's
Right.
got Bruce Lee in here. He's got, these two
Right.
guys. It's character center driven. It's about, Cliff Booth. It's about these two guys, Denton and Booth. They're buddies.
Hmm.
Washed up Hollywood actor with his stunt double.
Hmm.
The Manson stuff is going on. It's a time. The Playboy Mansion is booming at this time. Hugh Hefner is God.
Right.
It's that time period in the 60s. It's not a film about Charles Manson, and that's what people got confused with when
Yeah.
it got promoted when it came out wrong.
Yeah.
I remember even somebody saying, "Oh, it's a biopic, it's a pick on Charles Manson."
No, it's not even close. I mean,
It's not at all.
no, it's not.
It's
It's
about
not.
the '60s. I
Yeah.
mean, so you know, if you kind of go into it like that, I liked it. It wasn't my favorite Tarantino film, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, as Tarantino films go, I thought that was his worst one. But you got to kind of take into consideration the Tarantino films that you and I went through, right? Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Inglorious Bastards. These movies were intriguing from the get go, right? From immediate. I mean, the first scene in Reservoir Dogs is, I think, who's the guy with the big eyes running in the street,
Yeah,
knocking
yeah. I
people
mean,
over. I forgot his name.
crucially, yeah. I mean, but again,
And then it this kind of like, I understand what you're saying, but this kind of like has, you're waiting for that moment. You're waiting for that moment. You almost think the moment comes when he kicks the hell out of the guy on the horse after he flattens his tires. And you're like, okay, and then it goes right back to waiting again. And the last 20 minutes is just exhilarating.
well, I mean, you got to take into consideration. I don't know uh, if you know, but I have to say, in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, in that defense, that was completely Tarantino. He
Mhm.
wrote that. Reservoir Dogs, brilliant, great film, but it's highly, highly influenced. And I will say, because I'm such a Tarantino fanatic, I don't want to, you know, call him a copycat. But I mean, it's really City on Fire in The Killing. He took both of those film elements, basically the last 8 minutes of City on Fire, completely ripped off and just made it his own. To
Oh,
be
see,
honest,
I didn't know that. I
so
didn't
that's
realize
why.
that.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's highly sensationalized film, and it's not 100% original, but it's a great film. But I
Okay.
mean, he made it his own. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you watch City on Fire, it's pretty much the last 8 minutes of City on Fire. Same exact verbatim situation. But the dialogue obviously has changed, the characters are changed and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And, it's not original. And even Tarantino is going on to say it. I mean, but it was his first film. It was his first film that he directed.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I never thought I would see a day where I wouldn't be going to the movies anymore. I never thought I would see a day where America wouldn't be going to the movies anymore.
tell you what, I went to Scream 6 just because I'm a completist. I've seen all the Screams in the theater, so I'm a completist.
That's okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it. I go by myself. I enjoy it. I watch it. I get the cinema
It's an
experience.
experience. Exactly.
But John, I'm shit you not. There must have been about 20 people in there. It
Yeah.
was just ghost town.
Yeah.
It was
Nobody.
all young kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
it's it's unfortunate,
nobody.
man. I remember going to the movies and it was packed. I remember there were movies where they had an intermission in the middle
Oh
of
yeah.
it, and you
Oh
can go
yeah.
to the bathroom and you can go get your candy and
Oh
your
yeah.
popcorn. And I grew up, I mean, one of the first movies I remember seeing as a kid was Popeye with Robin Williams. I think I was 4 years old,
Yep.
right? And I just, when I was 10, my father took me to see Full Metal Jacket. I was 10.
Wow.
Yeah. Going back to the movies is not really much of an item anymore, which is kind of sad. It was always a big, like, if you take your girl on a first
Yeah.
date, you went to the movies, you know, those
I grew up
simple times seem to
yeah,
be gone now.
living in the movie theater, the Milford
Oh,
Fourplex, Forest
yeah.
Theater. You had a lot of iconic theaters in my area in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And sadly, they're no longer here. The Fourplex, which it had four screening rooms, and played so many great films. And then it got bought out. It became a Cinemark.
Mm,
Big business. It bought them out, and it's a Cinemark in a
right.
mall. It's just sad to see this kind of stuff go. It's like, but we had the Forest Theater, which was basically a throwback to a quarter, like the candy was 99 cents. It was $1 to see the movie. It was a
Mm.
rundown theater. It was one screen. And it actually had the old ticket concession stand, was a one booth with the lady in the window. It was
Ah,
one of those.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's one of those old school, you know, where you get the full experience. It's just, and it had the
Mhm.
popcorn things in the lobby, and you had the lobby poster in the behind the plastic. Just an
Yeah,
experience. I mean, Quentin Tarantino, there's a great, he talks about how the movie going experience was really the poor man's uh getaway, the poor man's entertainment. He could take his family to the theater, and it would cost, you know, under $20 for his whole family to go enjoy this experience,
right.
and you know, the lights and the big screen, and the, you know, now it's, you know, you take your family to the, and I think that's has a lot to do with it. You take your family to the theater, and you're looking at, you know, $80 just to
Yeah,
go see a movie,
just the
between the
tickets.
popcorn. Yeah, I mean, you know,
Yeah,
it's just insane. And I mean, you know, that's what he goes on to say. And he says that's sad about cinema, is that, you know, you can, families can no longer do that, if even if they wanted to,
yeah,
because of the prices. And
yeah,
I
you're
understand
absolutely right.
they have to they have to jack up the soda and the popcorn to make any money, because they don't really make it on the movie tickets. You know that. They make it on
Mm.
the concession.
Ah, I see. I see.
So yeah, I mean, you know, once in a while they'll throw me a free ticket, and I always want to pay for it because I want to keep it going.
Yeah,
Because,
right.
you know, they know that I do film write-ups and stuff. Some of the local theaters around here, they'll give me a prepaid, and
Mm.
I'm just like, you know, so I go and I buy the popcorn. That's like, you know, fucking $10, where you could buy, like, you know, 3 bags.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right, right.
I mean,
Yeah,
$15 for a little popcorn thing, like, you know, this big and
yeah.
stuff to keep them going.
Well, me and my
But
wife was saving to get married. She used to smuggle candy in her bag.
yeah, I mean, you know, I don't blame people to do that. I mean, you could go to the dollar store, and you could get a bag of Twizzlers, and,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
stuff it in your jacket and go in there. They don't check it really anymore. And stuff. My theaters are good to me, though. They gave me a limited edition Scream 6 poster, which is
Oh,
really
that's
nice.
cool. That's
They
cool.
gave it to me. You know, I mean, I get little perks like that, but it's, you know, but I want to see the theater experience thrive, because it's just, that's what I grew up with.
Me too.
Uh,
Me too. Yeah.
you know, my mother was a big film buff, and she used to take me to the theaters all the time, on Forest Theater, going to see, you know, silly '80s movies, Wildcats and
Oh,
Gremlins, and, you
yeah.
know, these silly movies. But it's an experience I shared with my mom. You know, I mean, and that I have
Sure.
those memories. You
Yeah.
know, and that's how I got in the, you know, loved film. She liked the TCM, you know, Turner Classic Movies. The you know, she loved sci-fi. She, What Happened to Mary Jane, and you know, all those kind of movies. You know, like the classics.
Yeah.
Going with the,
Yeah.
you know, all that kind of
My
stuff.
my parents did the same thing, man. My mother loved musicals because that's what she grew up to, you know. She
Yeah.
absolutely loved musicals. But you and I are going to stay in touch because when I want to see a movie, I am going to message you and say what movie is out that is decent, even if it's an independent film, and you can give me
Yeah, I could
your
give you a couple of, I mean, you've got to dig deep, but I mean, like, I watch a lot of weird movies, John. You'd be surprised. I'm a tongue. I watch a lot of cheesy horror movies.
really.
People are surprised at that. Yeah, I mean,
There was one horror
they
movie
think
that
I'm.
really went under the radar, and I want to know what you think about it. And then I'll let you go. Hereditary was I
You know
watched
what?
that and
Seamus, I've never seen it. I
I
had
was
people bug me to see it.
I was
Never
blown
got.
away by it. I mean, absolutely. My wife was blown away with it. I was blown away by it. Anybody I recommended that actually watched it was blown away by it because it was
Mm,
so different. And it was not really horror. It was more like the suspense, creepy
yeah.
tone to it, but it was just evokes this emotion in you. I remember like I was thinking about it for 2 days afterwards. It was amazing. And it
You
just
know what
runs
movie
on.
did that for me? Us. Jordan Peele's Us. I
Which
thought
one
that was
was us?
so innovative.
Which one
The
is
one where
us?
it was like the girl was, spoiler alert here for if anybody
Yeah,
hasn't seen
yeah.
it,
I've seen it.
where
I just
the wife is actually the revert, was the girl underneath.
yeah,
Like,
what when
it's hard to explain.
yeah, the
They
when she
had
goes into the
doppelgang,
amusement park,
right?
that one? Ah,
The
okay.
family had doppelgangers. They looked,
Yes.
and they were like the enemy, but the wife was actually the doppelganger all along. It
Yeah.
was it was brilliant what Jordan Peele did. I can't even explain what he did. It was very Hitchcockian, but
Yeah,
brilliant.
and you would think a movie like that or a movie like Hereditary would set off in the past, it would set off another
But,
type of
but you know,
just doesn't.
because we love it so much. It's hard to understand, but I finally got it. It's just not. It's not an interest of these kids. It's just really not.
Yeah.
And it's hard to understand that because we love it so much. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's what we're into, but it's just not what they just don't care.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's not an interest to them. They want to see, more action movies or Marvel and all this stuff. That's all they want to see.
Yeah,
It's just
it's kind of sad. And I mean, when is enough enough? I mean, they're literally filming the Joker in the town in the neighborhood next to me, and they were
because they're out. I don't mean they're because here's the thing where I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate with you is they
yeah,
could search this stuff. Kids can find they're out, but they just don't choose it. Like Hereditary was a nationally released film out in the
yeah,
theaters.
right.
People our age and older went to see it, not the younger kids. The younger kids
That's
want to
true.
see the Avengers, so they're
Yeah,
choosing this. So there
I
is
guess.
options. They're not being fed it. It's just what they're
Okay,
choosing, unfortunately.
I see.
But at the same time, I think the media promotes, Marvel
Yeah,
universe, Marvel films, larger than life. And
yeah,
I don't blame these kids. I mean, it's a fun time for them to see this, on the big screen. These
yeah,
big,
absolutely.
you know what I mean? But you know, we come from a different generation. We come from a generation, the Gen X, which was booming in the 70s.
Hmm.
So we caught the tail end of those films, and our parents were into those films, so we got spoon fed what our parents were into.
Hmm.
So you know what I mean? Like, whereas now that's the another difference is these kids are not really influenced by an older brother or a parent. They got their own world going on. They're telling
No,
their
you're
mother what's cool now.
a
You know what I
hundred
mean?
percent right.
So
Yeah, it's true.
that's the difference too.
Yeah,
I mean, and you don't see, I mean, I'm not going to say there's there's the world's full of bad parents, but I'm sure the parents are not sitting down like my mother sitting down and watching a movie with them. I mean, I used to watch, me and my mom would
yeah.
always watch Mystic Pizza. She loved Mystic Pizza because it
Right,
was
right.
filmed here in Connecticut.
Yeah,
Mystic
yeah.
Pizza in Connecticut, Mystic Connecticut. So we always watch that movie, and every time it comes on, I always remember, I'm watching it with my mom. You know what I mean?
Sure,
Like
sure.
that's that kind of resignation doesn't go on today.
No, I
The
agree.
kids just the
I
kids
fully
just on
agree.
iPhone playing
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Mom, you go do your thing. I'm gonna go do
Yeah,
my thing.
it's easier for a parent to give the kid a laptop or
Right.
iPad or whatever. Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
They could go watch the Housewives while their kids, on the iPhone.
yeah,
It's
it's the
really the
truth.
world
It's
we live
sad,
in
but
now.
it's the truth. Yeah, you're 100% right.
I mean, I
Neil,
remember watching Wizard of Oz with my brother and
yeah,
my mother every time it came on.
yeah.
You don't get that. The world's not like that today. Unfortunately.
No, on Thanksgiving, every Thanksgiving they used to play King Kong, the original King Kong.
Or we used to watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles every
Oh yeah,
Thanksgiving.
yeah. Which
I
was a
mean,
very deep movie. You
it's
know.
a great film. It's one of
Yeah,
my favorite John Hughes films.
yeah.
And we watch it every Thanksgiving, and you just don't see that in the world today. Unfortunately, it's sad.
No, you're
But
100% right. Neil, I want to thank you for coming back, and I want to
yeah,
thank
you're
you for
welcome.
being. I want to thank you for being part of the podcast and bringing these things to light. It's always a pleasure having you on, man. And so much love, much respect,
Yeah,
always.
thank you.
And
And watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood one more
I'm
time.
gonna watch it again. I am. I'm gonna watch
Give
it
it
again.
another try.
All right, you got it, Neil. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right, John. Take care, bud.
Later.